It's rare that I find myself knowing what the name of the episode is before I release it. As you can hear, I'm not in the studio. You find me on the road. And I've been on the road for the last 4 weeks. I'm somewhere in northwestern Victoria. Just spent the last few days in Ballarat, which once upon a time I called home. As you would already know, the episode is called A Quest to Unlock the Code. I know you haven't heard from me in a little while, and I fully expected to check the downloads. And look, just for the record, I don't check them very often at all anymore. There was a time where I would have obsessively checked them every day, agonised over them. How do I get more downloads, etc., etc., etc. However, I don't anymore. If I check them once a week, that's me doing it a lot these days. And I checked them the other day. And I haven't released an episode in near enough to 2 months. And last month alone, there was over 2,000 downloads. And I haven't done a thing. I'll be honest and say I fully expected to check them and see that there was none. And that you guys don't want to listen, and the UTC has come to its end. However, I checked them, and 2,000 downloads is not nothing. So thank you very much. However, you're also owed an explanation. Around 9 years ago, well, probably closer to 10 years ago, because it took the best part of 12 months to figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to do the show. But about 10 years ago, I set out on a quest to unlock the code. An exploration to try and navigate the chaos of life. Now, for context, that is 2016. I was 33 when I started this. I'm now 43. And there's been a hell of a lot that's happened in between. And the whole quest to unlock the code, what a great idea that was. That's what a great idea. Let's unlock the code to life in our times, as we used to say. And it's so hard to encapsulate. When I started the quest to unlock the code, you do so many things in life, and I had no idea what I was doing. No idea at all. Had no idea where my quest to unlock the code would take me, the things it would show me, the understandings that I would gain, the knowledge that I would consume and share, the answers, both good and bad, we can't forget ugly, that would be revealed whilst trying to unlock the code. And if you were to ask me now, hey Triff, have you unlocked the code? I would say yes, to a point, because I don't think you ever will be able to unlock the code fully. That's not what this is about. However, have I unlocked the code to making myself feel better? Have I come up with some rules and some principles that can help anybody help themselves feel better? Do I understand that discipline is the answer? Discipline equals freedom, as was Jocko's tagline, still is. There's so many things, guys. However, I think one of the problems I've had of late is that, I spent spend some money rebuilding the studio to try and... UTC3 was the next big thing. And UTC3 didn't fall on its face, because 2,000 downloads in a month when I haven't released a single episode in nearly 2, the show itself hasn't fallen on its face at all. The show itself has kept going. It has an energy unto its own. However, my energy, I wouldn't say fallen on its face. That is, that's not the correct terminology. However, UTC became something that it wasn't supposed to. It was started to... The reason I did it is I understood and still understand, and after teaching classes the last few weeks across Australia, I still teach the fact that you can't be the best father, the best mother, the best husband, the best wife, the best friend, the best lover, the best whatever it is you want to be, unless you look after yourself. And unless you have something for yourself that sits outside of your family, your work, the day-to-day grind of existence. You know, the question that I pose to my students is, what is your passion project? What do you do just for you? And UTC was that. Unlocking the Code was the thing that I did just for me. The thing that I used to escape the day-to-day drudgery of existence. And the first 4 years of Unlocking the Code, look, there were some ups and downs. I took it probably too seriously. I dedicated too much time. There's always a balance. There's a guy called Jody Lowe, and he had does have or still has a brand called Average as Fuck. Because you're looking at trying to be average across all things. Because any time that you dedicate more focus to something than something else, then something suffers. And UTC's tagline is, where focus goes, energy flows. And my focus has been on my job. Guys, I led a very, very mind-numbingly boring job for many years, all the way through COVID. And I had a lot of creative energy left over at the end of the day, because my job was mind-numbingly boring, and I poured that energy into Unlocking the Code. However, during COVID, the show became about something that it was never meant to be about, which is the never-ending and ongoing chaos that we've existed in since then. Because people act like it's over, like it's stopped. It's never stopped. It has just morphed and shifted and changed. They are still trying to loose our energy through fear and control and everything else like that. And I think the answers that came to me both through COVID and over the last couple of years post that, with time for reflection, and then just the answers that we've received in that time in between. Geez, it's dark, guys. Geez, it's dark. Probably the big thing of late that I've been struggling with, and look, the thing is that don't think that I don't have episodes in the bag. I've got like 3 or 4 episodes in the bag. I was invited on a couple of other shows. I've been a guest on Loomis's show and Anthony's show, and it's not like there isn't content there. I suppose I found myself struggling to get behind the mic and to share my thoughts. Because I think the show the show didn't become about it. I made the show, especially during COVID, a large part about the chaos that we exist in, and trying to reveal that chaos and trying to wake people up to that chaos and to help people see help people understand the world that we actually live in. And the problem is that that's not a lot of fun. And as I said, the show was an escape for me. The show was a fun thing that I could do with my friends, and that I could reach out and talk to cool people about cool things. And it became about chaos. You know, one of the original, an exploration in how to navigate the chaos of life was the first wordy thing that was at the bottom of our logo. And because that was the intention, that's what I tried to do. I was trying to navigate the chaos myself, and I was trying to help others out there navigate the chaos. And what happened is it lost its way. I lost my way, probably more than that. More than it lost its way, I lost my way. And it became something that I didn't look forward to. It was like more often than not, I would get on the mics and I would be angry. Angry about the government, or angry about the New World Order, or angry about this, or angry about that, about the next stage of fear and control that are being unleashed in our society. And let's not pretend for a second that it's still not going on, because it absolutely is. And I think that made me not want to step in front of the mic, because it wasn't fun. And the core research of the ancient civilizations, of the deeper understandings about self, and the deeper understandings about what you can do for yourself, about men's mental health, but even just mental health in general, lessons of life and love and understanding, that was the core of the show. And the core of the show shifted to just mainly about trying to navigate chaos, and what that actually was, and how we could do that. You know, and again, trying to make people aware so they can sit outside of that chaos. And I think here's a story. So week before last, I was in Newcastle, and I snuck down to the glyphs, the Gosford glyphs. Now there's a whole range of episodes that have never been released about the first time we went to the glyphs, because Brian was helping us with the forensic study of the glyphs. And the unfortunate passing of Brian not only put a sense of mortality in me, but also put a big hold to the research. And I think Brian was more unwell than he let on. And the original samples that we took at the glyphs were no good. So I had to go back. I went back with some gifts for the mother, the grandmother tree, and the warrior tree, and the scribe. And I was pretty lost when I went to the glyphs. And I've learned throughout UTC that intention is important. And so I went to the glyphs with intention, with basically just to be guided to get the correct samples to prove that they are real. More on that later. Maybe not this episode, however, later. And just for some guidance about what am I supposed to be doing, and how am I supposed to be doing it, and what is unlocking the code, and just some guidance. And I walked into the glyphs and I had them all to myself. It was amazing. I took a few videos that I'll release on social media in the near future, using my new camera and my new mic that I'm currently using, one of those DJI mini things. I'll try and take the road noise out as much as I can, guys, but We'll just see how we go. Anyway, I left myself with plenty of time because I was teaching a class in the afternoon back in Newcastle. And so I sat with the glyphs. I pored over them. I made a phone call to the Brotherhood of Unlocking the Code to share with them and, gives them some footage of me being at the glyphs and share some ideas about why I was there and what I thought the plan should be to assist in the ongoing discovery of trying to unlock the code of what these things actually are. And then it was time to go. And I was making another video on my way out, and I could hear children and a mother in the background trying to find their way into the glyphs, because they're not easy to get into, which is another reason why the fact that a soldier did it just for a joke is that more of a joke than the story is. And so I guided these kids and this mother into the glyphs, and I said, oh, no worries. And anyway, they turned to me and they said, do you know about these? And I said, well, yes, I do. And I gave them my interpretation. Because that's all it is, guys. It's just an interpretation. Do I actually know? No. I know what I feel. I know what I believe the scribe told me. I know. But it's just an interpretation. It's my thoughts, my feelings, my understandings. And everybody, if you think about the amount of variation of understanding that's come from those two walls, it's just an interpretation. I made sure I told them that, and I educated them on the long story short version of the Gosford glyphs and how they came to be and what I believe them to be, and showed them part of the story that Muhammad Ibrahim showed me, because I can't read them, that's not true. However, can I see the story now when I look at the wall? Yes I can. And then they thanked me very much for my time. Like, they were so thankful. They were like, we are so lucky we ran into you, that you were here when we were here, so you could share that with us. And of course I told them about unlocking the code and told them to look for the Knowledge of Egypt episodes with Muhammad, and then I went on my way. Unbeknownst to me, there was a grandmother that was with these 3 kids and the mother, and she couldn't get up into the glyphs anymore, so she was having a seat down by the grandmother tree. Oh, and I should say that before I left, I told those kids and the mother and the grandmother to retrieve some rocks or retrieve a gift and give it to the grandmother tree, because that's what you should always do. I always give multiple thanks to any sacred site when I visit there, but particularly that site. Anyway, I sat with this grandmother for, again, another 20 minutes, half an hour, and she asked me about the glyphs with a questioning look in her eye, me expecting me to say something like it was aliens or something like that. And I didn't, obviously. I said, this is what I believe. This is, the evidence suggests the Egyptians were here, and they came here many times, and they were coming to visit the indigenous here, the exact reason why. And anyway, we had a long, varied discussion. And the extra time that I'd given myself had ran out, and I had to get my ass on the road back to Newcastle so I could teach this class. And I told her that. I said, listen, I have to go. I'd love to continue the conversation. However, I've got to teach a class. And she goes, oh, are you teaching a class about this stuff? And I said, no, I'm not. And she said, that's a shame, because I would have followed you to Newcastle to come and listen. Isn't it fascinating how the universe works? And look, I think there's another story about the experience I had with the scribe, both this time and the first time, that's not for this show. However, the scribe was in my mind, And the universe was on my side that day. And I just said, well played, universe. Well played. Because the thing is, guys, people, like, it's so hard to encapsulate, the quest to unlock the code and the things that it's taught me. It's literally 10 years of my life. However, I think one of the easiest ways to encapsulate it is that I started, even though I was 33, I started UTC a boy, and I record this a man. And I actually understand what that means. And the thing is, I've been teaching classes again recently, face-to-face classes, which a percentage of listeners are my students, or have been my students in the past. And the face-to-face stuff is so much fun. I love being challenged. I love the discussion. I love trying to get people to engage. And look, the topic these days is chain of responsibility and fatigue management and safety and all those things. These are things that I've done my 10,000 hours of. And actually, here's another interesting story. The last few weeks being on the road, I was at a coffee company, and Steve and Marie, lovely people, and Steve goes, I've never had an expert here that I could pick the ear off. And in my mind, I started to say, I'm not an expert. Well, have I done my 10,000 hours in logistics? Have I trained approaching 12,000 students in safety and logistics and fatigue and all that stuff? Yeah, I have. So I suppose, in a way, as far as the moniker of that title is concerned, I am an expert in my field. And I suppose one of the biggest growths for me is that I don't rebel against those things anymore. I accept them. And I can feel them. And not with ego or, the old fig jam, fuck, I'm good, just ask me. But just hear them and receive them for what they are and understand them for what they are. Because I have been doing this a long time. I have taught over 12,000, approaching 12,000 students. These things are true. These things are true. And it's a little bit like, have I done my 10,000 hours on all the things that the show was? And all the topics that we cover there? Yes, I have. I could wax lyrical for hours about what I think about the ancient civilization and what I think about, what it was. Do I have a deeper understanding of that? Absolutely, I do. And it's just been a fascinating thing where it's like, okay. And when I talked about earlier about the where focus goes, energy flows, I got to present at Cardwell last year. Amazing experience. Hoping to get back up there again this year to present. And at the end of that presentation, I practically got a standing ovation and a round of applause. And I never expected that. Like, I think, as I said, when I checked the downloads the other day, I fully expected to see the downloads had fallen through the floor. No one's listening. No one cares. I can just wrap UTC up and continue about my business. However, the reality is the research doesn't stop. Has never stopped, will never stop. The personal development and the discussions around personal development and watching the brothers surrounding UTC implement the lessons and watching them succeed, and like that is of all the things that, you know, I've bear witness to over the quest to unlock the code, that is one of the most amazing things. Because to see that happen, and to see how the humble little show from down under, recorded in the little studio in my shed, to see how much that has helped people, and how they've taken the things that we've discussed and they've implemented them and they use them to make themselves better. That is the best thing. That is the most amazing thing that I've ever been such a privilege to witness, and I'm so proud of the men. I was going to say boys, however, Duncan picked me up on that, because we're not boys anymore. A lot of the blokes that helped me start the show and that are still involved with the show, they were boys when they started. However, they're not anymore. They are men. And to express how proud I am of Angus and Ben and Daniel, and there's so many. It's hard to, I don't want to start naming names, however, you know, those three guys are some of my closest friends, and to see their Loomis and Rob, and there's just so many names, so many names, and to see that and see how they've grown and how they've implemented the lessons of UTC. And it must be said, guys, these were lessons for myself, yeah? This isn't, I'm Bodhisattva sitting on the mountain, you know, levitating in meditation. These are, these principles and these things, these are things that I was trying to implement in my own life to make myself better. And as I saw that they were working, I was sharing them. And, you know, because I was teaching, it's like, well, they had to be something that could be implemented for anybody. And that's how I looked at it. You know, and I think, actually it was 10 years ago. Because unlocking the code started with a book. And somewhere I have close to 25,000 words written. A book written. And I thought it was called Unlocking the Code. I can't remember what it was called. However, it's in my file somewhere where I'd written a book. And I still might. However, again, writing a book these days is not what it used to be. That's not you're going to become a famous author and retire. And look, I suppose talking about things that aren't what they used to be, and nothing's what it used to be. Everything grows and morphs and changes. Time moves on. However, being a podcaster is not what it used to be. You know, you're expected to do talking heads and reels and this and that and the other and blah, blah, blah. And I think, look, I'm not sure where I sit with the little 2-minute reels just yet. Because I've had multiple people say to me that just do it deadpan, do it dry. You don't have to be gimmicky about it. Be yourself. You know, because one of the biggest compliments that I receive regarding the show is that when people meet me that have been listening to the show, they say you are exactly the same in real life as you are on the show. And that's true. You know, that's the reason you haven't heard from me. If I wanted to be some podcaster that's just got to get episodes out, got to get them out, and just put content out there for the sake of putting content out there, again, that's not what UTC is about. It's not what it's supposed to be about. So if I don't put content out there, it's because I don't feel like it. because I'm not in a space. I'm not going to bullshit you guys, because I did that. I did that in the early years of unlocking the code. We must get 1 out a week. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. You know, what happened is that both mine and Angus's family suffered as a result, because our focus went to that instead of something else. You know, where it should have been, on the family, on our work, on all those things. And it just isn't what it used to be. And, you know, when I started the show, there was a handful of podcasts in Australia. A handful when I started the show. And then during COVID, when everybody was locked up at home, every man and his dog started. My dog probably has a podcast. Not my old dog. Maybe my new dog does. She's young and hip. However, that's how popular they became. And because I never advertised, you know, if I said to you I might have spent like over 10 years, I might have spent $100, and mainly on Facebook advertising, like that would be at the top end, right? That's how little I've ever. The entire show has always been word of mouth, or just posting on socials with links to the show. And it's never been about being insta-famous. Like, even now, am I still very, very open to the show becoming successful enough that I can truly focus on the research? And, you know, I think as far as research books are concerned, and reels and videos and stuff like that, it'd be in that. Like, as far as books are concerned, it's at least 20 that I've started to read and, you know, highlighted and folded down pages. And, you know, as far as, you know, it just, I've got so much to do. However, I needed to make sure that my home was sorted out and was safe and stable. And that's realistically something that I've only just achieved. However, again, it's not something that, you know, one and done. You know, nothing about life is one and done, guys. I wish it was. I wish it was black and white. I wish it was yes or no. But the answers are inevitably found in the shades of grey. And it's a difficult thing, because where focus goes, energy does flow. And my focus has been off the show because it didn't feel right to me. You know, being angry on the show was not what it was supposed to be about. You know, politics and geopolitics, and it's not what it's supposed to be about. Now, unfortunately, it's in the puzzle, because I do believe that there is a systematic, not destruction, but maybe denial of, you know, the past and what the past actually was and is. Because if you control the past, you control the present, and therefore you can control the future, you know? And that was sort of what I said in Loomis's documentary last year. And look, I feel like that, you know, I've still got an hour and 22 minutes till I arrive where I need to arrive. I don't think you guys need a solo cast that long. However, what are we talking about? Why am I talking about the quest to unlock the code? Well, I think a number of things, a number of reasons. Number one, I wanted you guys to understand where I'm coming from. And I wanted to share that UTC will be changing, because I can no longer look, if you're not awake by now, and if you're not aware by now, and the thing is, I'm preaching to the choir. Blah, blah, blah. That's the first vocal stroke, considering I haven't recorded anything in nearly 2 months. That's pretty good. I think I'm preaching to the choir with you guys anyway. But if you're not aware of the control and the fear and the chaos and all the stuff has never ended and is continually going on in one version or another, and is not over, by the way, at all. If you're not aware of that already, I can't help you anymore. Because I want to do UTC. I want Unlocking the Code to be something that I look forward to. However, in order for it to be something that I look forward to, I can no longer be part of the chaos anymore. I can no longer spend hours agonizing over it, talking about it. I can't. Because my energy is worth more than that. So is yours, by the way. I don't want to drag you down. I don't want to, what's Triffin and John, and what are they angry about this time? What part of the chaos they're going to talk about? And the thing is, guys, there's so many talking heads. There's so many shows. There's so many things. I don't need to do that. I don't want to, I suppose. I don't want to. This is the thing. I don't want to do it. Because I need to have something. I need Unlocking the Code to be something that I want to do. That I look forward to doing. And to be honest, the last few episodes, some of which, look, I probably won't release a couple of them because they were of the time. And because of the 2-hour news cycle and Donald Trump doing the YMCA, everything moves on so quickly. So those episodes won't probably ever see the light of day. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it's too late anyway. Whatever they were about before, it's too late. They are they're irrelevant now. But those, like the State of Flux series, I don't think it's coming back. And look, if I'm asked or if I'm invited to come and have a chat or anything else like that on someone else's show, or if the inevitable connection between the chaos and the fear and control joins with the research, which it probably will from time to time, sure, we'll talk about it. But I'm no longer dedicating a percentage of time, of my valuable time and your valuable time, to discussing that chaos. I want UTC to be an escape again. I want it to be something you can download that you can look forward to. Whether it be an adventure about ancient civilizations, or talking about mental health, or having a bit of fun and having a discussion, or telling stories, or reminiscing, or sharing stuff about the paranormal. And look, even UFOs and UAPs. The last live show I did with Anthony, getting a little tired of that as well, because the reality is, and look, they tried to start World War III to distract us from the Epstein files. That didn't work, so now they're going to release all the UFO files to distract us from the Epstein files. And yeah, we're going to release everything. Yeah, right. As if we believe that. As if we can, no one believes that. And why would you? Right? Why would you believe that? That's ridiculous. And I think, look, as far as the UFO and the aliens thing is concerned, I think they're here. It's not a story for today, but I'm pretty sure I assessed a reptilian. I gave a reptilian humanoid their white card a couple of months ago. And I'm not joking about that. I'm really not. And I wouldn't say those words if I didn't mean them. And that's not a story for today, but maybe we put that one on the list because it was one of the weirdest. Like, I'm a weird guy. I've had a lot of weird experiences, and that was an experience that was very, very, very weird. And I can't explain it any other way. I'm pretty sure I gave a reptilian humanoid their white card. You know? how do you contemplate that one? I think they're here. I think they've been here for a while. I think there's maybe multiple races here. I think that maybe, you know, because look, I don't think I finished my thought a little while ago when I said one of the things I've been really, really, really struggling with is the fact that, you know, we were pretty sure that we were ran by, you know, pedophilic, satanic, narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic, lunatic men. However, now we know we are. Like, we actually know that. And no one cares. You know, I suppose as a survivor of, you know, pedophilic abuse, the fact that no one cares, the fact that we're not in the streets burning things to the ground, I just don't understand that. And the problem is that if I started jumping up and down about that, they would just silence me. You know, I there's part of me that can't help but wonder whether those COVID shots were about control, or whether or not they made people, whether or not they were purposely designed to get people to plug back into the matrix and not question anything, because you don't hear anything about that anymore. You know, I almost guarantee everyone that's listening to this knows someone who died from turbo cancer or suddenly got cancer or whatever it is. We can't talk about that. That's the First Wheel of Fight Club. And no one paid for COVID either. Like, what about the 10,000, you know, it's hard, I won't put numbers, the countless small businesses that no longer exist due to COVID, the suicides, the fact that just, and I think the thing is, all of that compounded my unwillingness to talk about it, because it's like, what's the fucking point? No one cares. It's unbelievable to me that no one cares, and I don't think that's true that no one cares. However, not enough people care to actually band together and do something about it. You know, with these devices that you're listening to me on have connected us in ways that we're still trying to understand, but they've separated us and isolated us more than anything. And the fear and divide, the fractal fear and divide, is unbelievable. As I say, it's hard to believe. You know, and I've said this a few times to some of the men, and, you know, some of the blokes in and around the show, and conversations that I've just had. It's like, if it wasn't so terrifying, you really have to applaud how well they've turned us into slaves. Not slaves in the sense that we are in chains, but we are indentured. We are in servitude. Yeah? I mean, it's a Sunday afternoon, I'm driving 6 hours across, 6-7 hours across northwestern Victoria. Got to deliver 3 classes in 3 days and then drive back to Melbourne Airport to fly home to Queensland. You know? And this is the thing, like, everyone's going to get up tomorrow and go to work, aren't they? Because we have bills to pay. We're material girls in the material world. And it's just so impressive how they did it. And I've said this before, but it bears saying again, is that, you know, the back end of COVID, I think it was 22 or something like that, I realised that this has been a long-term plan, and we are just pawns. We are nothing. And the thing is that Are our overlords reptilian from another planet, or from the dinosaurs, or from underground, or from under the water? You know what? Nothing would surprise me. And personally, I think the chances of that being true are not zero. Will we get to figure it out or find out? I don't know. You know, I think we were led down the garden path with, you know, because we're in another forever war. You know, the thing is, like, how do you make change in amongst all this chaos? I'm not sure that you can. Unless we find a way to band together and join together and really try and, you know, make these people in power pay attention. But that's just a puppet show. Like, honestly, you know, the reality here is in Australia, you know, did they rig the election? Well, look, that's a discussion that probably needs to be had. However, more than that, did they rig the way the elections take place? Absolutely they did. How did any Western government form an, you know, 80 seat majority when they only received less than 33% of the vote in the positive? Like, there's just no way that makes sense. However, when you start digging into it, they do deals for the votes of the minor parties, and then that's how they did it. But that's not, you know, is that a leader? Oh, I got 30% of the vote. I won with majority. That means over nearly 7 people out of 10 did not want you in power. That's not democracy. It's, you know, I think the whole thing is just such bullshit. And there's so many deep, dark layers to it that it's hard to encapsulate and talk about. And I think, you know, once, as I said, now we know. It's not a question, right? We know a bunch of satanic, pedophilic, child-eating, narcissistic, sociopathic billionaires that like juice boxes are the ones in control of this planet. But we are just pawns in their game. And you know what you can do, and probably one of the reasons that UTC is going to change, is that the best thing you can do with someone like that is not play the bloody game. So I'm not playing their game no more. I want to have some fun. I want to continue to build the community that I've built around myself. I'm going to do we are going to get a presentation done. Probably the first one will be in Queensland. Got to try and figure out whether we can live stream it. That's a different problem, not for today. However, I'm going to go back to the core of what UTC was supposed to be, because that was pure. You know, and the reality is, all the State of Flux series and the Through the Looking Glass series and all that stuff, they've never been very popular anyway. They never download as well as anything else, especially to do with the megaliths or aliens or UFOs or anything else like that. So why do them? I know that I have to stop doing that in order for UTC3 to fully embrace itself. And I want it to be escape. I want it to be an escape for you, an escape for me. You know, take yourself away from all the chaos and all the bullshit, and actually just enjoy a conversation or enjoy a topic that is completely nothing to do with that. Again, no doubt it will crisscross. However, as far as dedicated shows, no more. Because I want it to be something that I look forward to, and therefore I think you will look forward to. And if I'm not standing in my integrity and being honest with myself about where the show is at and how I want to do it and what's actually going to make me want to do it as opposed to dreading to do it. That is the lessons, guys. That is the lessons. That's part of the lessons. That's know thyself. You know, the reason I haven't even just done intros for those other shows and released them is I needed to be clear in my mind what I was going to release. I need to be clear in my mind that I just didn't start ranting at you guys during an intro, because that doesn't help anyone. No one really likes it, and I don't really like doing it. I end up in a negative mind space, and I just don't need that, because it's fascinating the state of flux shows and these other shows where we've got together and things have gotten off the rails. We always come back to love is the answer. We always come back to community. We always come back to the only thing that you can affect is what is right in front of you and all that stuff. And I think after giving you guys that advice over a few different episodes, I've been taking my own advice lately. And that is, again, requires a different level of discipline and understanding in order to do that. However, long story short, and the conclusion is that UTC will step back from doing shows about the modern chaos, because again, you'd have to do one every couple of days. I just don't have it in me. I don't want it. I don't want it for you. I don't want it for me. I don't want it for any of my guests. What I want to do is make sure that you guys are enjoying what you're listening to, that you're learning, that you are growing. That's what the most important thing is to me. And look, I think to finish off, I thought I'd share with you guys the 3 principles, because I've been teaching them quite a lot lately, and it's been a good reminder for myself to understand what they are and how they work. So in the top right hand corner of any whiteboard that I have will always be 3 things, and the first one is KISS, which most of you know stands for keep it simple stupid. Why is stupid there? Well, stupid's there to remind you not to be stupid, because we all have been, we all can be, we all will be. But it's less about that, and it's more about keep it simple. And what does that mean? Keep it simple means the simplest thing is often the most efficient, it's often the most effective, it's the most cost effective, it's the safest, it's the easiest, it's just the best. We choose to overcomplicate things when we don't need to. The simplest answer is the most effective. Break things down, keep it simple. The second principle is 3 to 5 seconds. Now, why 3 to 5 seconds? Because 3 to 5 seconds is the difference between fucking something up and not fucking it up. It has been and will be again the difference between life and death. And these are things that I've seen. Doesn't bear to talk about now. However, understand that keeping it simple is one of the easiest things you can do to help improve and understand your life. Okay. The third principle is housekeeping. Keeping things tidy. And I think the other thing I realised that if you're trying to research State of Flux series, then your algorithm becomes about the chaos. Well, look, number one, try and put your phone down. However, number 2, I don't need that chaos every time I want to go for a doom scroll. Right? Because who needs that? You know, and are they energy vampires feeding off our fear? Look, again, that's a discussion that needs to be had, but I don't see the evidence as to why that isn't true. It feels true. What is it? The truth has a ring to it. It feels true. And I think we just need to go back. Well, not go back. We just need to restart at the start with a different intention on how we do this. And that is, let me back it up again. Housekeeping is housekeeping of the mind. It's housekeeping of your physical space. It's housekeeping of your actual personal space, of the things you see on your phone, how disorganized you are with all that stuff. That is all to do with housekeeping. And 3 to 5 seconds is just as important, absolutely. And keep it simple is just as important. They all work in tandem together. They work in tandem. One complements the other, complements the other. And I think if everybody chose to keep it simple, take their time and clean their shit, then the awakening that would give, not only in your own personal space, but spaces across the world, is something that I don't think we can contemplate right now. So yes, UTC will be different from now on. Be a bit more focused on the ancient civilization stuff and the men's work stuff, the mental health stuff. I think that's where the two things are going to lie, because you can always learn more, you can always understand more, and we've got stuff on the Gosford glyphs that hasn't been seen that needs to come to the light of day. And just making sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's, but just to have fun as well, guys. To have fun. Alright? Because what's the point to any of this if we don't find a little time to have fun? And I want UTC to be fun again. I want to look forward to doing it, to talking to people about different things. And I want to reach out to the other different shows that I've seen here in Australia and have discussions with them. But again, I don't want to continually be talking about the chaos, because it doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve us. Okay? I'll probably sign off, guys. I really, really appreciate everybody's time. Really appreciate all the kind words you sent through to the show. If you want to send me an email, unlockingthecode9@gmail.com. I was trying to get a bit of a mailbag together, so do that. Unlocking the code, the number 9. So unlocking the code 9 is in the numeral @gmail.com. Send me an email with your thoughts, any ideas, anything you want me to talk about, any of that stuff. Reach out. Right? It'd be very cool to hear from you. Then what we can do is tailor the show around the original listeners of the show. Okay. And when everybody else catches up, we'll deal with them later. That's it for me, guys. Take care of yourselves. Be kind, be cool. Until next time. Cheers.